Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. This is a podcast for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault, whether as a child or as an adult. Know that you are not alone and the abuse was not your fault. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a certified recovery life coach and also a survivor. Let's find hope and healing together. This week, I continue with the theme of healing and fandom with my interview with author and survivor Kenneth Rogers Jr. Kenneth is the author of the How to Heal Your Inner Superhero series. This series uses comic book superhero and villain archetypes, cognitive behavior therapy, psychology, and his own autobiographical journey as a survivor to help other survivors of childhood sexual abuse heal. His multiple award-winning guides include Heroes, Villains, and Healing from 2017, How to Kill Your Batman, 2018, How to Save Your Inner Wonder Woman from 2020, How to Master Your Inner Superman, also from 2020, How to Slow Your Inner Flash from 2021, and How to Unite Your Inner Lanterns from 2023. Each guide in the series spotlights a different path toward healing for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. With the Masters from Johns Hopkins University, Kenneth Rogers Jr. lives and teaches in Baltimore, Maryland, with his wife, Sarah, and two daughters, Mirus and Amare. Please join me in welcoming Kenneth to the podcast. So, Kenneth, tell me your story. I'd love to know more about you and your history. I know you write about abuse and recovering from abuse. And so I'd love to hear your story, your journey, however much you feel comfortable sharing.
So, I'm not sure where to start. Like, do you want to start like when I was a kid, or do you want to start like the healing process?
Wherever you want, because I know when I share my story, I start kind of general story, and then I go to my 20s, then I go back to when I was a kid as more stuff gets uncovered. So I jump all over the place. So, and I get that.
Sort of thing, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Our healing journeys are like that because so much of our past sometimes is hidden, and truths are hidden and then become uncovered. So however you want to share.
I guess, so I've always been sort of a guy that's always trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, an overachiever, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true in elementary school, middle school, high school, but like especially in like high school, like always trying to do stuff, be active. When I got to adulthood, when I got to be married and have a house, a kid, like full job, I had like made it, right? Like it felt like I had crossed that finish line. I just bought my first house. I married my wife, and we just had our first kid. And I had a really good job. I'm a teacher, and I was to a new school that I really liked. And then, like, immediately after I, like, started the new school, things just started to, like, fall apart. I started to get super depressed, super anxious, not really understanding why, what was going on, thoughts of suicide, just couldn't really get out of bed. I finally, like, went to the hospital. My friend Sully, like, took me to the hospital because there was a suicide scare, and took me to the hospital. And from the hospital, they gave me, like, a list of different therapists and psychologists that I could get in contact with. So found my therapist, found my psychologist, was really able to hash out about my childhood sexual abuse and assault by my sister. And we worked on that for years, really trying to uncover like what had happened and what that entailed. And it happened when I was from 8 to 10 years old by my sister, who's 5 years older than me. And it happened most of the time, like when my parents were gone, like either working or going out, just having a good time. And oftentimes also on like Sunday. So sometimes like Sundays I would get super anxious and depressed, not really understand why. because it would also happen like during that time as well, because
Hmm.
my parents would have different shifts or go different places, so it would be just get super anxious, super scared, also at the beginning of the week. And so that went on for 2 years until, without really understanding why, my sister just said, we can't do this anymore, this is bad, we could get in a lot of trouble, so you can't tell anyone, this is a secret. And nothing happened. So for, the majority of my life, young adulthood, no, that never happened until I started to get comfortable, and then start to. I guess that's why I always was sort of an overachiever, trying to prove that I'm
Mm.
okay. We worked through that with my therapist Susan, and then while working with Susan, going through my healing, I really started to see similarities between what we were talking about in therapy and the superheroes that I was really loved, and I really just superheroes are awesome. So I really
Hmm.
saw a lot of parallels between like the coping mechanisms and the cognitive distortions that Susan was talking about when we were reading The Courage to Heal by Ellen Bass and Laura Davis. And so I was like, there are a lot of overlaps here. First, I wrote my memoir just about my story, really just sort of that one was for me. But then I wrote Heroes, Villains, and Healing, which really sees like some of the parallels between the heroes like Superman and his need for perfectionism, along with like a survivor's need for perfectionism and overachieving and living behind the facade. Characters like Batman, who are extremely hypervigilant and
Right.
trying to control everything, and how survivors often feel like they have to control everything as well, so that they don't feel like they are that small little child who was abused and hurt.
Interesting. You equate Batman with hypervigilance. I never made that connection before
Yeah,
because, yeah, that's a huge symptom for abuse survivors is hypervigilance. And yeah, Batman, yeah, if you look at the whole lore of his story, yeah, he was super controlling. The 60s version, a little OCD because he labeled everything.
yeah.
If you saw that, it's like, okay, this is the button for this is yeah. But yeah, super in control. Same root word with vigilante and the hypervigilance. Yeah, I never made that connection before, so that's fascinating. Please continue.
Uh, yeah, and then the Flash and his need for always moving, associated with the workaholism that many survivors feel that they have to have, trying to achieve that finish line fallacy. Like if they get to that goal, then they'll be healed, they'll be fine, they'll be better. And so there was a lot of overlaps between heroes, but also villains. Like the need for some individuals that have been victimized to need to cause chaos in the same way as the Joker,
Mhm.
and to make the world as chaotic as they feel on the inside. Or
Right.
Mr. Aziz, and the need for self harm. Like he cuts himself every time he kills someone, and the
Mm.
need for self harm that some survivors have as well, because they have no way of actually expressing their emotions or their feelings. And then Two Face, that disassociation that many
Mm.
survivors have, that not being able to connect with different parts of themselves. So Two
Right.
Face is like the definition of that. Also with Shazam,
Mm.
and or Captain Marvel, the fact that many male survivors feel like they are Billy Batson on the inside while they are adults on the outside. Like everyone sees them as adults, but they're actually a little boy, or they don't really know how to navigate the world. They're playing it by ear.
Right. Now you mentioned you're a teacher. What grades do you teach?
I have taught 6th through 10th this year. Well, I'm mostly focusing on ninth grade right now, so I'm going to be doing ninth grade again this year.
What grade were you teaching when you had your depression attack?
7th grade.
You were teaching seventh?
Yeah.
Not necessarily making a link. How old were you and your sister when when the abuse happened?
I was 8 and 10, so second and third, fourth grade. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then she would have been higher grade.
Yeah, she would have been seventh or eighth. And I do know some of those connections, like why I
Okay.
feel sometimes uncomfortable around some of my female students.
Hmm.
Even though I'm the adult, I'm bigger,
Right.
but sometimes I would get intimidated and scared
Yeah.
and frightened simply by being around them, because they would remind me of my
Right.
sister.
Yeah. Oftentimes, yeah, that's when we get triggered. There's some kind of event. And yeah, it sounds like you being around seventh grade girls all of a sudden would be an obvious trigger for you. So that makes a lot of sense. Not that I'm your shrink and we're not in a coaching session, but yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I had similar things happen to me in my own story when, yeah, triggering people with triggering ages and so forth. So, and I've seen that theme with a lot of people's survivor stories that, yeah, there's some kind of triggering event in the real world, in the current world, that triggers those memories. And it's actually kind of good because a lot of that stuff gets unlocked.
Yeah.
So you can deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, how many books have you written? You've written several books, I know.
13?
13.
Yeah.
Wow. And all in the same genre of
No, I've been all
superhero
over the
things?
place. No,
Okay.
I've got young adult trilogy. I've got
So you've written some fiction.
yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Like I started off with fiction, and I still dabble in it because I just needed a way to escape. So my way to escape as a kid was either reading or writing. So I would journal a lot. I still have a lot of my old journals. Still write out a lot of things by hand just to feel the pen and the paper rather than just rush and just type things out to really slow down. But I would just read and read and read and read.
Wow.
In middle school, I read a book a day. Like, I remember I got really upset because it took me 3 days to read Fellowship of the Ring, and I was really upset.
That's a deep read too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, so I was very obsessed with proving my worth by reading a book a day and then taking what they had was the accelerated reader test. So you could
yes.
take the 10 questions and see how well you did, and then you could get points. And so
yeah, that was beyond my time, but my children, yes, they had all those AR points that they had to go through. And yeah, Stickler Dad, I wouldn't let them read Harry Potter, which was like 3,000 AR points or some obnoxious thing. But
really?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm exaggerating.
Harry Potter
But
was not out when I was
okay,
in, so it was all like Jurassic Park and Lord of the Rings. So I would just read and read and read and read and read, and then when I got to be in college, I started to really write and just rather than journal, like, hey, what would happen if I changed myself into one of these different characters, and what if I added a touch of magical realism rather than just have it be a normal world. Science fiction, just anything to really not be here.
Yeah, I know I dabble in poetry myself, but I know all that creative, I believe that's right brain activity. That's actually where a lot of our trauma gets stored is in the right brain. So if you can create, whether artistically, through music, through paint, through story, through poetry, through song, however, you're accessing that part of the brain that stores the trauma. And it can allow you to process that and then get out those parts of the trauma that need healing through the creative process. So, yeah, arts and healing is huge. So, yes, the fact that you found that medium of telling stories allows you often subconsciously to process the trauma. I was at a retreat for male survivors. And this guy was an artist, did all this paint work, all abstract. He showed us, but he told us his story. That's part of the retreat. We all share our stories. And I'm going, oh, wow. So you really use your story in your art? It's like, no, I don't. Dude, yeah, look, because you told me the story of this and this and this, and that's what this picture is. You're here, and that's that, and that's that. And he's like, no, it's not. It's like, and other people are like saying this, yeah, dude, totally. This is, and he's like, really? He had made all these abstract paintings and had no idea he was telling the story of his own trauma through these abstract paintings, though it was painfully obvious to everyone else who knows his story and saw the paintings, and he never saw it that way. He just created, but it was like that wounded boy inside of him telling those stories. Through the medium of paint. Yeah, that's so cool that you have used the medium of storytelling. And I'm sure that's healing for you. Still, other people probably love reading your stories. And I can't wait to see some of the stuff you've written. And yes, I will read some of your books. I will. I'm looking forward to that. So you did some fiction novels, and then how did you go into the nonfiction using superheroes as your muse for books on healing?
So I started with the memoir, and then so Heroes, Villains, and Healing. I went against the wishes of Susan, and I like read The Courage to Heal on my own, even though we were supposed to be reading it together during our sessions. And I really saw a lot of I like tore it apart and like analyzed the different coping mechanisms, and I got the really thick 75 years of Batman or 75 years of Superman,
Oh yeah,
because this
yeah.
is before DC Unlimited.
Right, where
Or
you can get, yeah, you get all the comics. Yeah,
yeah,
Marvel has the same thing. You can get
yeah,
every
or
single
multiple
comic
ones.
ever
Yeah,
made. And
yeah,
what is that? Is that like a monthly membership to
yeah,
access all that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, kind of like Netflix for comic books.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was before all that, and so I was like, I need a place to start because I didn't read comics as a kid, mostly because I wanted to be seen as an intellectual rather than someone who was play reading or
Right,
yeah. So I didn't
right.
want that stigma. I remember having the thick X-Men books though.
Oh yeah.
Remember when they came out with like Nightfall, like that whole thick Batman
Yeah,
book?
the more graphic novels, right?
Well, no, it was like an actual novel. It was
Novelizations.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this. I never got through like the first 5 chapters. It was too dense. I didn't know where to start, so I started off with those, and then started to dive in more into the different comic books because I had watched like Spider-Man, the animated series, Batman, all the movies, all the like. I was obsessed with that stuff, but I wanted to actually use comics and actually have something concrete and grounded rather than an actual film. So I read those, let that take me into other comics, started getting comics sent to my house, like small little subscription of Batman and Superman, and
Hmm.
then connecting those with different coping mechanisms and continuing to write, and then using some of the healing strategies that I had been given by Susan that I had used and some of my own stories and incorporated those into the guide, Heroes, Villains, and Healing. And then
Right.
going from there into other heroes and really diving into specific heroes and like their coping mechanisms rather than just all of the heroes and villains in one single book.
So could you give me a few examples of those coping mechanisms that you would see these comic book heroes make use of, and how would that apply to someone dealing with trauma now?
Yeah. So it's like the ones I said earlier, like Batman and his need for hypervigilance,
Right.
Superman, need for perfectionism, Wonder Woman, and the need for caregiving, but also so even though our caregivers like they give a lot to other individuals, they forget to take care of themselves. So they're
Right.
pouring from an empty cup, making
Right.
sure that you take care of yourself and you take care of your trauma before you start healing everyone else around you.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Codependency, that's a huge issue with survivors that we tend to, because that was part of the abuse. We were groomed to see ourselves as worthless, and our only worth was in taking care of the needs of the perpetrators.
yeah,
And that seed got planted into our subconscious that we have to take care of others. Our needs are not important. And so that codependency mindset is so strong with survivors, and trying to overcome that is very difficult. So for the Wonder Woman example, how would you use that as a model for someone trying to overcome that?
first you have to what I talk about in How the Savior and the Wonder Woman, which is one of my guides. I talk about what made you leave your paradise island. So what caused
Ah,
you to leave your paradise island and like go to man's world or to grow up
right,
or to like just sort of forget some of those things that happened to you in the past. So addressing your trauma before you start to help other individuals.
right,
And then I really talk about metabolizing trauma. So a major problem with caregivers is that they just figure like, oh, I'm going to absorb, I'm going to take on all this extra burden that other people can't have. I'm going to take on this extra trauma and I'll be fine. I'm used to it. But
right,
you can't absorb all that and just expect it to just live inside of you. It's going to manifest itself in other ways, whether that
right.
be heart attack, whether that be in obesity, whether that be in so many ways that it can manifest inside of an individual's body and it's going to get out somehow. So
Right.
if you figure out how to get out that trauma and process that trauma rather than keep it bottled up and held inside, then you're better able to take care of yourself and provide that self-care rather than continuing to make sure everyone else is okay. And self-care is a big part of it as well. And when I talk about self-care, I don't mean going to a spa and like getting your mani pedis and all that. Sometimes it's as simple as not answering an email or turning off your phone or I don't know, just going for a walk, taking a nap, saying that it's okay to go to a movie and sneak a burrito and sit in the back and eat it and watch The Flash. I didn't do that. No one did that. And so, yeah, so it's different. It's different things like that to make sure that you have your self care and you say it's okay. I'm human. I'm allowed to do this because I don't have to be perfect, and it's all right.
Right. Yep. You don't have to be perfect. Yeah. That's good advice. So you've written about several different heroes, though. I hear a strong lean towards the DC universe. I'm more of a Marvel person. Who's your favorite? What's your favorite IP? Is it the DC universe, or do you have a different IP that's your real go-to that you really enjoy watching, reading, experiencing?
So I've been focusing in on DC for the last few years.
Uh-huh.
So all of my books have really been focusing on
Right.
DC. But
Right.
the next book, which comes out in the spring, will be my first Marvel book, which will be
Oh,
Heroes, Villains, and Healing, which deals specifically with Marvel characters. So I do the same thing
wow.
that I did with the DC universe, but with the Marvel universe, looking at Spider-Man and his childhood sexual assault that he experienced when he was a kid. Um, Different villains like Vermin in the Spider-Man universe. Let's see, who else? Who else? Um, do I don't get that much into Spectre, Moon Knight, but I'm not as well versed in the Marvel universe
Right.
as I am in the DC. So it's taken me a little bit longer.
Right. You
And
got to do some research, which I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
is just so hard to do
Oh
that
man,
research.
no, I spent the last week just reading a crap ton of Daredevil, and he's
Oh,
so
yeah.
cool, so
Yeah.
awesome.
But
I
you
guess
did not answer my question. What is your favorite? So for fun, not for work, for
yeah,
fun, what's your go-to IP? It sounds like it's a DC universe.
yeah, DC.
Okay. Yeah, and that's been all your books. That's kind of what I thought. Who's your
Yeah.
favorite character in the DC universe?
Uh, Probably Wally West's The Flash.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
He
And
just
I'm
experienced so much trauma,
right.
and like he was a complete just douche in the 80s, 90s. He was just a
Right.
jerk, and like he experienced so much trauma and like just loss, and like he's he's very optimistic now, and he's a loving father, he's a loving husband,
Hmm.
and he's always just like, it'll be okay, because he realizes like even though he had so much and he lost so much, he I think he better understands like none of that really defines who he is as an individual. What defines who he is as an individual is him, rather than the possessions he owns um, or I don't know. I guess it's him and his relationships that he's built with his family and with his friends, rather than his materialistic possessions or what's happening around him right there at that moment. So Wally West is pretty dope.
Wow. Now, I know you're big. book reader and comic book reader. What about the movies and TV shows, especially all the DCU? They've got the DCU, all the
Hmm.
CW stuff, and all those other DC properties that have been covered in different forms of screen media.
Oh yeah.
What's some of your favorites, and what are some of your, oh my gosh, they totally destroyed everything that was good about that particular property.
Oh, I'm
So,
definitely more of a Marvel movie watcher and
oh,
TV.
uh-huh,
So yeah,
yeah,
like DC has some pretty awesome comics, but Marvel is killing the movie game. I still
right,
haven't even seen uh like like yeah, it's, DC just I'm not gonna get into it.
yeah.
They let us down a lot with a lot of their movies.
Did you watch any of the TV shows? Because you had
Yeah.
the DC shows on the CW, starting with Smallville, and then
Smallville. Yeah.
and you had Gotham, which was on Fox. Yeah. Um, and then the whole Arrowverse, all those shows.
Yeah.
So, any standouts for that?
Smallville was all me. Like,
Yeah.
I would watch I would sit down, watch episodes. Like, no, I have to be home. I have to watch it. I have to know what's going
Yeah, this is
on.
before streaming, before you
I
could,
know.
yeah, you'd
Yeah.
watch it
So,
live. And if you're lucky, you had a VCR and
yeah.
you could tape it. But yeah,
And then, like, it just kept going. So,
yeah, it was 10, 10, 11 seasons, something
I
like that.
couldn't watch
Yeah.
all of them. But then when streaming happened, I was like, oh, guess what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So I went back. I binge watched all of them. So Smallville, like my
Yeah.
go-to amazing, horrible CW show.
Yeah.
It's good. I did watch The Flash. I stopped though. It just kept going. I was just like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was an avid fan. But yeah, the last several seasons were like, okay, they're just dragging this on. And it's like so many filler episodes. And yeah, I kind of like it's kind of the UK model that's now become the streaming model where it's 10 episode seasons. That's
yeah,
it. And that's how it's been for decades in Europe. But yeah, in the US, instead of these 22, 24 episode seasons, yeah, let's cut it to 10.
yeah,
Um, and so they have to bring story. It's all quality, hardly any filler. We're just kind of thrown together. Okay, we need to get something done to get that 24
yeah,
episode mark. So you get a lot more quality, though not necessarily the quantity. But yeah, I understand. But yeah, I love Flash. Um, and actually, I was at GalaxyCon Raleigh a couple weeks ago, and Stephen Amell made some comments that got him in trouble. But his session, someone asked him what his favorite crossover episode was, where there was several different crossovers in Arrow, though because of the writer's strike, they couldn't talk about anything. He said his favorite was doing the Barry body swap episode, where
mhm,
he and Barry swapped bodies. So he became the Flash, and he could crack up and make all the jokes like Barry would,
yeah,
because that's more of his personality. Even though his character in Arrow was all very stoic and not very humorous at all,
yeah,
but in real life, he's very funny, and it was one of the funniest sessions I went to, where yeah, he would just crack jokes and then laugh at other people's jokes, and it was very funny session, and he's a very funny guy. Um, Speaking of which, do you go to any Comic Con type conventions? Do you cosplay? Have you gotten into that universe of fandom yet?
I've not gotten into cosplay. I have sort of backed off from cons due to the pandemic. Haven't really started
Right.
going back. Like Awesome Con was like my go-to. Used to go to Awesome Con in
Uh,
DC.
oh, in DC. Okay.
Yeah, all the time.
Are you?
Um,
Where are you located? You're outside of the DC area.
I'm in Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Um, Baltimore Comic Con that happens
Okay.
in September. A few sci-fi conventions used to go up to. Boston for Boscone, and I never made it to ReaderCon, but Aresia. So yeah, I sci-fi conventions and Comic Con.
So you've attended, but you've never really cosplayed.
No.
Yeah, yeah, that's something of my story. The last couple years, this has been my third GalaxyCon, and then there's like a little mini Greenville, North Carolina Comic Con, which is just a 1 day thing. You get in for like $10, and actually, I think it's less. It's under $10 to get in, and it's nice, very low key, no panels, no discussion, just kind of an expo floor.
Yeah.
But GalaxyCon was huge, and this was like over 50,000 record crowds this last year, which is a couple weekends ago. But part of my healing journey, doing a costume in cosplay became very popular. I told my buddy who would go to cons all the time, like you, sometimes dress up, not a huge elaborate costume or whatever. I told him what I was planning on doing. It's like, oh, dude, yeah, you're gonna get mobbed, but it's good. And it's like you just go with it. And it's like, okay. And I was so nervous because, all those inner voices and whatnot. It's like, no, you're no good. Um, and getting all this love for my looks, but in a good way, in a healthy
Yeah.
way, very healing. So yeah, that was very healing for me, to have people embrace me and this design I created, and it was very cool. But this last weekend, I was at the Greenville, North Carolina Comic Con, and the speaker had some downtime. When they do the cosplay contest, and there was downtime while they were judging, and he says most cosplayers are super introverts,
Yeah.
and doing the cosplay allows them to get out. They can be very shy, but it allows them to come out of that shell and present themselves, and that a lot of healing happens. And he was very encouraging for. There was a lot of dads and moms with kids celebrating their fandom of whatever they created and helping them with costumes and so forth, and really applauded them because. Um, that's something kids will take with them, that yeah, a parent cared enough to dress up or help the child dress up and go to these conventions and be with them and supporting the child and so forth. So I thought that was very cool, but yeah, very touching that um, aspect of fandom can have a healing aspect to it, and it certainly has helped me in my healing process for sure the last several years. So
That's great.
yeah. Um, let's see. How are we on time? I know you said you had to be out in an hour,
Yeah, I
but
gotta get my daughters to bed.
oh, gotcha. Okay. Um, let's see. Anything else you'd like to share about your journey? And about, especially about how you haven't really mentioned so much about your healing journey. You've been to the therapist, and I know creating and writing the books and writing the self-help books have been very helpful for you in your journey as you help others. And that's a wonderful way to give back, is to help
Yeah.
to help others heal, but you are also healing yourself in the process.
Yeah, I mean that's a large part of it was actually writing the books and exploring my own healing, but also I don't know, it's a very personal thing. It's like a day-to-day thing. Put in the work to make sure I meditate. I was meditating as much as possible. I don't meditate as much as I should now, but I don't think I need it as much as I did before. Making sure like I'm very aware of my cognitive distortions, so making sure my thoughts match my emotions and my actions, so that I'm not all over the place, so that I'm not always thinking like I have to do this, but rather I want to do this, or so the all or nothing thinking is not. I try to kick that out. So it's just being aware of um, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, and making sure that I'm just trying to be the best version of myself, but also trying to make sure that I'm giving myself room to say I am still just human.
Right.
Yeah, just yeah, it's all day to day, and just making sure I don't forget the stuff that I learned along the way, and that books help me do that. Helps
Right.
me revisit a lot of the things that I've learned, and then make sure I keep it in the practice, so I'm not I don't fall back into my old cycles.
Right. Right. Now, I've got a question. You are an African American male,
Mhm.
and how has that part of your story influenced your healing journey, and also in the whole fandom universe? And as an author, I know different communities respond to healing in different ways, and the concept of therapy and so forth. Some are more supportive, other communities are less supportive. So, how has that informed your own healing journey?
Um, I mean, it's difficult, especially as a black male, because black community hasn't really always embraced therapy, and especially talking about male survivors and victimization of males.
Hmm.
Rather, most of the time, it's males are the perpetrators. So changing
Right.
that narrative is difficult. And so you sometimes I don't always feel as supported as I would like
Mm.
from my community, and like trying to get that awareness out there that males, especially black males, can be survivor or can be victimized, and they need to heal as well. So it can be difficult, and it can be lonely. But that's unfortunately that's a large part of most of my life has been very much like a lonely sort
Mm.
of existence, sort of journey. Um,
Right.
and I mean, it's just something unfortunately I've gotten used to. Uh, and I don't know, it's lonely, it's difficult, but the work needs to be done. So I
Right.
keep doing it.
Right. And you're doing well. So now you're a father as well. Is that
Mhm.
right? Yeah, you got, how has that been in healing? I know being a father, that has helped my own healing journey. My kids are now in their 20s, they're grown. Though they still teach me things and they keep me in line sometimes when I go off. It's like, Dad, you're doing this. It's like, oh, am I doing this? Okay, all right. So, how has that informed your healing journey as well, being a dad?
Uh, well, my kids are now the age I was when I was abused.
Mm,
So, like, my therapist Susan, like, she told me, like, when I first started seeing her, she was like, do you know how small an 8 year old is, or a 10 year old is? And I was like, not really. Like, and because I was stuck in the idea that the abuse was my fault because
right,
I'm the male in the situation. Like, this is
right,
my fault. I should have stopped it. And it was like look at an 8 year old and a 13-year old. Like, look at them side by side. And I didn't do it before, so I'm not gonna go to an elementary and like look at a let me see
right,
an 8 year old. It's
right.
weird.
Exactly.
So I was like, they're my age now. It's like they are small. They are
Yeah.
teeny tiny, very naive to the world, very inquisitive, just asking questions, always asking so many questions. Like, good God, just let me sleep.
Right.
So many questions,
But
questions.
why, Dad?
Yeah,
Why?
yeah. So
Yeah.
and it's great. Like, just trying to figure out and understand the world. And I was like, well, dang, like that was me, like 8 year old, 8 and 10 years old, trying to figure out the world, and then like this happened, like my sexual assault happened. I was like, I can't make heads or tails of the world, and I can't talk about those
Right.
parts of myself, or those parts
Right.
that have happened. So I mean, it's of course I would be lonely. So it's informed my understanding of who I was at
Right.
their age, but also um, how I should be. I don't know, a good father and a good husband, and a good teacher. Uh, and that's part of the reason, like my logo, my sign. I'm not sure if you. Oh no. Uh,
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh, is it your
yeah,
kids' names? There we
it's
go.
a if.
Oh, okay.
So it's a semicolon and an F. Um, the semicolon is the international sign for like keeping going rather than
Hmm.
putting a period. You
Right.
put a semicolon, so rather than give up, just put a pause and keep going. And then
Right.
If is a poem that really talks about what it means to be a good man,
Mm.
and trying to map all those things out. And so putting those together really helps remind and ground me that what it means to never stop trying to be a good man. So that's sort of like my motto, what I sort of try and live by.
Wow. That's great. Now, I know for children, they're so egocentric at that age. So, especially the younger ones, it's like they put a blanket over, oh, no one can see me because I'm under a blanket, even though everyone can see them, they're under a blanket. But that's that mindset. So, if something bad happens, oh, something bad happened to me, it must have been my fault. I must have done something to cause that.
Yeah,
That's where their mind goes. That's where our mind went.
yeah,
So that's why we tend to self blame. And that's why I end every podcast episode with, it was not your fault.
yeah,
So we know that, yeah, it wasn't our fault, but our child mind would want to go there for sure. Um, Now, one last thing. Yeah, again, your perpetrator was a female. It was your sister, but
mhm,
I know being a male survivor of a female perp is not talked about a lot. So how has that been different for you in your healing journey? Because it's like, oh yeah, you got it with an older woman, even though it was your sister. But yeah, there's that world side of it. Oh, you're lucky, but the reality is like, no, it's horrifying.
yeah. Um, I mean, yeah, it's weird because many times with the males, or with males, like if they are approached by an older woman, an attractive older woman, and they lose their virginity, or it's taken from them, I should say, by
Hmm.
a older woman, then they're always like, oh yeah, man, you really got it. Like, man, you're a man. You're so it's difficult to really wrap your head around that form of abuse and trauma. And for me,
Right,
it's no different, because rather than saying like, oh yeah, you're a man, it's more um, this was my fault, because males are like almost always identified as the perpetrator. And for a
right,
long time, I was like, males can't be sexually assaulted, especially by a woman. I mean,
right,
for the longest time, the FBI had it like sexual assault was uh, being penetrated,
right.
and it has nothing to do with
We're
any
being
forced penetration,
forced to
whatever,
penetrate. Yeah,
or oral. It's very one sided.
right.
So it really messed with my brain about, this was most definitely my fault, and if I see anything, I'm gonna get in trouble, and I am
Yeah,
uh, a horrible human being who is most definitely going to go to HE double hockey sticks
right,
for anything that he's done. Um, and so for a long time, it messed with my brain, and I that was like the last big hurdle, was like trying to get over the fact that this was not my fault. I was like, I'm never going to get over it. Like, this was my fault. But what really helped was when me and my wife, we had a son, but he passed away during the first,
Sorry.
like the first trimester.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, like he was a stillbirth. It was very, very traumatic, very hard.
Right.
But when he passed, and he still had his ashes, and I was like there was nothing that we could have done to save his life, like absolutely
Right.
nothing. We tried everything. We tried very hard, and sometimes bad things just happen, and
Yeah.
you know, understand that. Like sometimes it's not your fault. It's not. It's not God's fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just bad things happen,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that we can really do about it. Um, and so he really helped me understand. Like Cass helped me understand. Like that's just something bad that happened. It's not my fault, and so stop saying it's your fault, because saying it's your fault gives you some semblance of power. It lets
Right.
you. It sort of lets you say like, hey, that's that. I can have that amount of control at least to say this is my fault. I can have that amount of control. So if you say no, that's not my fault. That's like you giving up that last iota of control and power that you had. But it also frees you up to say, frees you up to heal and to put that energy into other things. So Cass definitely helped me understand that.
Right. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. Now we'd like to do the part of the podcast where I ask 4 questions. So, first question for Kenneth: what is your favorite food memory?
Food memory would have to be beef chow mein cooked by my mother when I was a kid. Uh, it's not real beef chow mein. It was that can, that blue can of beef chow
Oh,
mein.
did it have like the 2 cans?
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
had to
yeah,
tear them apart? Yeah, like,
with
yeah,
the two parts.
Chun
So,
King. Yeah, you have to like take the sticker
yeah,
off and there's 2 cans. I remember that. Yep, my mom fixed
yeah.
that too. Yep, I
So
remember
that
that.
was
I
good.
don't think they make that anymore.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
But we would add extra steak to it, a little bit more gravy, and cook the rice, and it was a great meal. It's probably one of the we always used to have this like one of my favorite meals as a kid.
Yeah, it's amazing. Food memories, so many are tied to love. If you make something edible for somebody else, even within a family, even a mom cooking a meal, you just feel the love. I know one of my favorites was tuna fish casserole that my mom would make. Well, kind of from scratch. It'd be the Kraft macaroni and cheese mixed with cream of mushroom soup, and I think she peas, onions, egg, breadcrumbs, or cornflakes, or whatever topping thing
Yeah.
she had available. But yeah, and every once in a while I'll get a hankering for it. It's like, yeah, I really want to make that. And she made it for me once as an adult. It's like, so what would you like for dinner? It's like, yeah, because I went to visit her. It's like, can you make tuna casserole? It's like, okay, I'll make it. So yeah, she did. That was cool to have her make it. I make it every once in a while, and it's like, yeah, yeah, still tastes like home. So yeah, that's wonderful, amazing. Those strong food memories. It's like a trigger, but it's a positive trigger. So I like talking about that because it is a positive trigger. So what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
Um, Probably my birthday when I was in seventh grade.
Uh-huh.
Um, my friends bought me a Nickelodeon alarm clock.
Ah,
Like my best friends, the old squiggly lines and like the splat on it. And,
right. Very
uh,
90s-ish.
yeah,
Yeah.
they all got me a car and they all signed it. It was very unexpected, but it was very touching. It was kind of awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, that's sweet. That's what a great memory. Yeah. Because we don't often get stuff from friends.
yeah.
So yeah, that is special. That's cool. I like that. What is your favorite church memory?
Church memory. It's very very difficult to have a good church memory because it's always so hot. Like my family's from the South, like from Alabama, and I just remember like being in full suit. Easter, they always do a homecoming to my mother's church every single year in August, which is like the hottest month of the year to have a homecoming in a like one room church with like a single air conditioning.
And that was not strong enough, obviously.
just sweating so much, just like, oh my God.
Wow.
Can we please just finish it? It's so hot. It was sweltering.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And I now live in the South too. So yeah, I understand those hot summers for sure. So do you have a favorite scripture verse, and what about it speaks to you?
I do not have a favorite scripture verse.
Okay.
Good scripture verse. I'm not as read with the Bible as I would like, and I tried many times to like read the Bible. Like when I was in middle and high school, I was like, I'm gonna read the Bible front to back, and I was like, I gotta find, and I tried to get like different versions of the Bible, just could not get into actually reading the Bible. I go to church every single Sunday with my family. I just do not have a verse that's like
nothing speaks to you.
Yeah.
I understand. Fair answer. Fair enough. Well, wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you for that. To end, how can we find you? What are your social media links and website and so forth? So if anyone wants to get in touch with you or your bevy of books that you've written, how could we find more information about you?
Yeah, my website is lostimaginations.com. If you're looking for me online or like Amazon for any of my books, you have to put in Kenneth Rogers Jr. because if you put in Kenny Rogers, you get an old white guy that used to sing some country music. So it's
you got to know when you hold them. Yeah.
So you got to put in the full name in order for me to come up. Kenneth Rogers Jr.
So do you go by Kenny though, or you stay Kenneth?
Yeah, I'm not gonna go. No, Kenneth. No, that's so formal. No. I'm most definitely Kenny Rogers, but I am not Kenny Rogers.
Not that Kenny Rogers.
No.
Nor are you his son.
No, because there is a Kenny Rogers Jr. as well. So I couldn't put Kenny Rogers Jr. So it's like, geez, guys, just give me a break here. Yeah.
Wow.
So Rogers Jr. You can find me on Instagram. Just put in Kenneth Rogers Jr. Find your Lost Imaginations. Okay. And my Twitter handle is @Liturian, LITUARIN. Yeah.
What's the background to that name?
It's part of my young adult trilogy. Liturian is an individual that can read your mind, write the story you can't write in your own handwriting, and leave it somewhere for you to find in order to try and save the life of an interracial couple.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So there's a plug for that book. So that's a little teaser. But that's great. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Kenny. Calling you Kenny. And this has been wonderful. And I hope to have you back. I want to go more into depth about trauma themes and superheroes in their stories. And I might just do a panel because the last guy I interviewed as well writes on fandom and that kind of thing. So I'll get two experts going. So I'll have a little panel discussion. So I hope to have you back, both of you back soon. And we'll set that up. And thank you so much for your time. And congratulations on your healing journey and all you're doing to help other men heal. Thanks.
If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Live Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarliveconsulting.com. That is Polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.